So, what would have happened if the US government really decided to kill funding for the CVE program, which some say is the backbone of the cybersecurity industry? Well, there's been a lot of drama and back and forth about the government not funding it, a new nonprofit called the CVE Foundation that was launched in an attempt to save it, and then the government decides to extend funding for another 11 months or so. So, what the hell is going on? Well, we're going to break it all down for you, including what are CVEs, for maybe those of you that don't know, and the importance of this program, and perhaps we'll predict what might happen next, or maybe not. And then we're going to talk about the recent executive order by the Trump administration, which has launched a federal investigation and revoked the security clearance of former CISA Director Chris Krebs because he said that the 2020 election was the most secure in U.S. history. Basically, facts. So we'll be discussing the fallout from that order and what it means to all of us in the cybersecurity industry as Kevin clicks away on his clicky keyboard.
Yeah, I was looking up something. I was looking up people's names that I'm going to bring up yet again, but this time I'm getting their names right. Yeah.
So joining me for these topics is the great Kevin Johnson. Here he is, folks.
I would argue I'm not a great Kevin Johnson. There are better Kevin Johnson.
The greatest?
No. This, I'm not, Trump. I'm okay with.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, I'm okay with believing I'm not the best of what I am. Man.
So CVEs, this was quite the drama last week.
Could we get rid of CVSS instead? Like if we're getting rid of it,
I actually agree with that.
Yeah, CVSS has always been such a joke. Okay, so
let's talk about CVEs. Like, what are they first for our audience that may not know what the CVE program is?
Well, it depends on you.
What's the summary?
Because I just
okay. In your opinion,
my opinion is they're probably a marketing term, but
oh gosh.
So a CVE is basically somebody found a vulnerability, and they reported it up through a CNA. Is that the right acronym?
Yeah.
And
a naming agency. Yeah.
It's been assigned a number so that we can standardize how we talk about it. Right?
Yes.
I mean, there's lots more about it, but I think that personally, I believe that is probably the most important aspect of the CVE numbering system is the ability to say, hey, here is the data we've collected. Here are standard things we collect about this. Yeah. And contrary to what most people think, there is a vetting that is supposed to happen on CVEs, right? We don't see it because it's backlogged and it's pretty far behind in getting stuff associated. But I don't want to call it drama. The word drama over the last few years has really gotten a negative connotation, as in we're making fun of it. And
that's fair.
In this case, I'm not making fun of it. I don't agree with many of the concerns people had. And I want to be clear. I'm not saying that CVE programs should have lost funding. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I don't think CVE being defunded, if it had happened, I don't think it's as catastrophic as you would be led to believe by reading posts. And the reason I say that is not all vulnerabilities have a CVE assigned to them. And the CVE system was so backlogged in dealing with vulnerabilities that we weren't getting the benefit from the CVE system we were supposed to be getting. And so, again, not saying it should lose funding. I'm glad it was funded. I want it to be funded. This is one of the uses of government money I think is good. As a matter of fact, I wish they would give them more money so we could accomplish better, right? But we're not giving it more money. And because we're not giving it more money and it's backlogged, I don't think this was as catastrophic as it was presented. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I think the biggest concern from my perspective is that there's a whole ecosystem that's built around CVEs, vulnerability scanners, as an example, right? Like there are, they look to CVEs as a database of new vulnerabilities that they need to have support for and write into their scanners, right? Checks and things like that. And I think that we as an industry have probably relied a little too much on this and have not had a backup plan if, like, say, this goes away. Like, what's the alternative?
So what you're saying is you would like vulnerability scanning vendors to actually earn the money they charge us? I feel like that's what you said. Because what you said was, CVE is very important because it's a data store that vulnerability scanners can use.
That's one of the things that's important for.
And I feel like I'm arguing something I don't necessarily agree with because I think the CVE program is important, right?
It is.
But I think that the reasons I've seen, similar to yours, those aren't the reasons it should be important. If let's pick on Nexus.
It's become that way.
I know it's become that way. This is the same thing. Social security numbers weren't supposed to be an ID. And
great
right,
point.
We built a system that was not supposed to be a comprehensive list of every vulnerability that was important. As a matter of fact, we've seen, if you follow Jericho's blog on attrition.org, we've seen years of people issuing CVEs for glory without actually having a vulnerability that's exploitable behind it, right? The CVE system has been abused for stunt hacking. The CVE system has been abused for marketing materials. Look, we've generated 27 CVEs this year. Well, that's interesting because not a single one of them is real right. Like, and that's what I say is I actually think that I can't believe I'm going to say something good came out of stupidity from DC, but I believe that this threat of defunding it, I hope, has made more people who have just come to rely on the CVE system without really understanding its limitations sit down and say, wait, is this something we should be relying on? Right? Can we fix it? Yes, we can. We're Bob the Builder. But there's gotta be a way to look at standardizing vulnerabilities. And Jericho ran OSVDB for years. The open source.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That was an attempt to build out a standard data store of vulnerability. I mean, it was more than that, but right?
Oh, way more. Yeah.
And it worked well. It collected data.
And it wasn't government funded.
Wasn't government funded. Volunteers ran it, right? And there are ways to do this. And I don't have any problem with government funding. I like the idea of getting government funding. I wish that government funding had gone to Sulu and Jericho and let them build a good thing, right? But the problem is we've built a system that people assume incorrectly that every vulnerability that's listed is real and has been vetted by an expert and validated by an expert and has real risk behind it, right? That's not true. People lean on the CVE system as, I mean, how many times have you, in your pen test career or when you worked with an organization where you were doing vulnerability management or whatever, and you found a vulnerability that was in the system and they said, what's the CVE number? And then they ignored it because there wasn't one, because somehow hackers don't exploit non-CVE vulnerabilities. Right? There's so many things that have been wrapped around the CVE system that none of which are accurate for what the CVE system does. That's what I wish we would look at. Instead of just having this hissy fit that government funding was pulled and then given back and then maybe pulled into the future. And your statement of may we predict? No, we can't predict. No, I can. I can predict exactly what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. Trump is going to throw more temper tantrums. We'll talk about some of those in a second.
We'll talk about that next,
Trump will continue to throw temper tantrums. The world will continue to throw their hands up in, what are we going to do? And we'll pull funding, we'll give funding, we'll pull funding, we'll give funding. And none of us know what's happening anyways.
Nope. And it'll all change in 4 years when there's a new president.
Yep, hopefully.
Hopefully.
And the core problems that we have with the CVE system will continue to be ignored and left there because people will focus on the things that aren't important. That's my opinion. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
This is stupid.
Well, we could always go back to full disclosure. I mean, like, remember the full disclosure message board? That's where all this kind of started.
I remember it very well.
Yeah.
And I remember that.
I mean, that's that's where you went to disclose new vulnerabilities, and then there was a discussion, and then there was a lot of drama. I mean,
But we found out about vulnerabilities.
we did. That's how we found out,
Yep.
and people built tools around like the full disclosure mailing
Yeah,
list because that's all we had at the
I
time.
did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we all
Yeah.
did. Yeah, it's interesting. So, well, we will see what happens with that. But let's talk about the recent hissy fit, which Trump has issued this executive order ordering a federal investigation against former CISA Director Chris Krebs because he believes that Chris made up all of this stuff
No,
to
he doesn't.
discredit
No, he
Trump
doesn't.
and all of these things.
No, he doesn't. I don't believe he believes that. Sorry. I'm man,
All right,
no,
well.
we keep giving excuses. And I know that's not what you mean to do, but that's what we keep
No.
we keep giving excuses by saying, well, he believes it. No, he doesn't believe it. He has admitted in court, his lawyers have admitted in court that he has been told that the election was secure. He has acknowledged the fact it was secure. He has acknowledged the fact that this is bullshit. And now he has power. And by the way, it's not just Chris Krebs. There are a number of organizations and people. Chris Krebs just happens to be a we all know.
Yeah.
What we have is a fucking baby in a position of power with none of the adults in the room having the balls to stand up and say, stop it, and slap his hand. And what we are doing is we are allowing his random stroke-induced spastic psychotic rape. I don't know any other way to put it, right? Like, this is all we have. We have a Play-Doh infested baby. We have a toddler that is running the country.
Quote that one.
Right? Well, look at him. He's obviously eaten a lot of Play-Doh.
Eats a lot of McDonald's, Kevin.
Oh
McDonald's.
God, no, McDonald's is better than that. But right, like this is
actually
absolutely insane. Because right now, let me be blunt. If any other president, if any other party issued an executive order that named an individual and said, anybody who deals with this person, I'm coming after you next, we would storm the fucking White House. Been done. But Canada burned it down in the 1800s. Maybe they can do it again. But I listened to, I've mentioned this before, I listened to a podcast called Serious Trouble. It's Josh Barrow and Ken White. Then they've got Sarah Fay produces it, and it's awesome. It's amazingly good. Ken was a prosecutor. Josh is a reporter. And they've been doing stuff. And one of the things I like about them is, while it is obvious they are not MAGA supporters, and while it is obvious that Trump is not their favorite person, they tend to be fair. They tend to say, like, hey, here's why this is okay, and this is why this is not okay. And I like that. They also don't react to things that aren't actually, there aren't lawsuits around. Okay. So somebody's saying, I'm going to sue. They don't do anything with that. Yeah. When a lawsuit's filed. And they have been covering, because Chris Krebs, and I can't remember the other guy that was issued at the same time. They've been following this. Those were not the first ones. The first ones that did this were law firms that had done things, supported things, very, very much. And I'll go back to the absolutely psychotic, insane MAGA supporters that aren't paying attention to things. Josh Wright and Ken White and Josh Barrow both pointed out that the president has the right to revoke security clearances. So the executive order saying we're revoking the security clearance, other than the fact that it probably was unnecessary because Chris Krebs' security clearance was already inactive, is my understanding.
Well, it was for Sentinel 1.
Yes, but it was Chris Krebs.
This company got acquired by them.
They acquired his consulting firm. And, right. Yeah. But that is something the president's allowed to do. And period. That sure. But it's the rest of it that is pretty messed up. And it's funny because last week, one of the law firm suits, the law firm had their security clearance pulled and all this kind of, contracts, anybody who works with them, and the law firm sued, surprise. And the courts have issued a temporary restraining order against implementing some of the parts. And here's the part I find funny. And I want this for the people who actually support Trump. I want you to understand how much money you're wasting. I did work for the DOJ as an expert witness a few years ago. So I'm in their system. Last week, I got a letter certified, sent to us, everything else, letting us know that the temporary restraining order prevents us from implementing the things in the executive order. This had to get sent out to every organization. My understanding is it got sent out to every organization that's done any work whatsoever with the Department of Justice. And to be clear,
Wow.
My work with the DOJ was I was an expert in a case for the Florida Attorney General's office, and the case was referred to the DOJ for criminal charges. I never actually got paid by them. They didn't owe me any money.
No.
They took my report and my testimony in the deposition and in the trials that we were in, and they used that in the case, the criminal case. I never did anything testimony-wise. I never charged the DOJ anything, yet they were required to send me a letter to do this. I'm required to respond and say that I'm handling it. That all of this stuff is being handled because of a waste of carbon's hissy fit, because somebody dared to tell the truth. This is asinine.
Yeah.
This is asinine.
It's crazy.
And any company and any person that is supporting this aspect, I hope they remember this when we have our version of the Nuremberg trials.
Yeah. I just, I think the other part of this is that, there's obviously been, a lot of good support for Chris.
As there should be.
In the community. As there should be. Exactly. A lot of people that are well known in the industry are coming out, making statements and continuing to say, like, this is wrong. And the fact that it came out in an executive order is even just like unprecedented.
The whole thing is
like,
messed up.
It is. And to attack an individual who is just doing their job and is a person of,
here's the part that, because you know this, we've talked about this before, we've talked about it on the show, we know it personally. I am a absolutist when it comes to the First Amendment.
Yeah.
And this, along with all the other problems with it, is absolutely an attempt to stifle speech.
It really is. It absolutely is. And as you saw, Chris had resigned from his position at Sentinel-1, not because he was, forced to. Like, he did it out of, like, he wants to keep his company, now past company, out of this.
The problem is,
which is very respectable.
I mean, the problem is that doesn't change anything. The executive order still says Sentinel-1.
Yes.
Right?
It does say Sentinel-1.
Hasn't been changed. So Chris's life is upended yet again because of a short little man's.
And what did Sentinel-1 do?
They've hired somebody Trump doesn't like.
Right. Exactly.
That's it.
That's BS.
I don't think
Total
BS covers it.
Well, it's beyond BS.
Yeah, this one's bad. This one pisses me off.
It
pissed
bad.
me off before Chris Krebs was involved, and now it makes me even madder.
All these stories, like, we keep talking on the podcast, and then there's always another one that just one-ups the previous story that we had. I'm like, when does this end? When does it end? I don't know. I
don't either, sadly.
But
like I said,
this
when the
episode
adults
is going
in
to
the
end.
room stand up.
Yeah, I know. Well, this podcast episode does have to end. So with that, we will let everyone go. But before that, though, I did want to showcase my shirt. Enjoy cybercrime. I got this through a company called Industrial.
I like it.
Which they are not a sponsor of the show, but I just like kind of like your shirts. Yes, they should be. But I do like your shirts, the Roosevelt shirts.
The cult.
So yes, the cult.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe this is another cult that is started.
I don't know. Wait, what is it?
Industrial.
As in just they're not
industrial. Remove the I. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, thank you all for listening, and until next time, stay safe, stay secure, and stay private. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Be sure to subscribe wherever you like to get your podcasts. Visit sharedsecurity.net for merch, previous episodes, and more. If you'd like to help support the podcast, join our Patreon to get ad-free episodes and many more exclusive supporter-only benefits. Visit sharedsecurity.net/supporter for more details.